Welcome to the kitchen. We are back. It's Sunday and it's another day to learn something great. This week it's part 2 of the Learn to Cook series. So if you missed the first one, it was all about chopping and how to cut things. This week it's all about cooking things. We're going to be roasting, we're going to be boiling, we're going to be parboiling, we're going to be talking about fat, we're going to be talking about salt. Let's just jump straight into, well, learning to cook vegetables. So, vegetables, we all love them. Well, not everyone. Some of us don't. But maybe that's just because you ate one in a horrible way and you thought, God, that's gross, I don't ever want to eat it again. So that's what this part 2 of Learn to Cook is all about. So the first thing that we're actually going to talk about is not the vegetables, is not about how we do it. That number 1 ingredient, salt. I've talked about it before and I'll talk about it again. This thing is so important. That is why when you go to a restaurant, the food tastes so good, because they use salt. So unfortunately, you cannot be afraid of using it, because without this, your vegetables are just not going to get their best start in life when you're putting them in the oven, in the water, wherever it may be. So salt is the number 1. But salt can come in many forms. It could be fish sauce, it could be soy sauce, it could be gochujang, you know, which is a fermented bean paste, which is salty. It could be as a miso, you know, all of these things that have that saltiness. That's why the veg ends up tasting great, because they have this salty taste which is just enhancing their flavor. So firstly, we're going to talk about boiling. Now when it comes to boiling, obviously we got our pan of water, but like I said already, salt is really important. And what we want to do is, if we're boiling something, you know, it's not being roasted, it's not having all them extra things brought out of it, we want to make sure that we are seasoning it from the inside. So, you know, when it comes out, it's already had a little bit of the salt doing its thing, you know, and making that veg taste great. It also keeps it greener. So when you're getting your water ready to put on for boiling your veg, we need to put salt in it. So it's like you want that water to have a little salty note. If you're ever unsure, let that salt dissolve a little and taste the water. Can you taste the salt? Yeah, it's there. It's just a little hint in the background. Obviously, if you've got a much larger pan of water, you're going to need to add more salt. For a pot like this, where I've got probably about 1.5 litres to 2 litres of water, I put in maybe a full teaspoon. So if you're ever unsure, give the water a taste. And if it tastes too salty, then add a little more water. But you always want to make sure that it is in there. So what's really important is we put the water on the stove and that it is boiling before we add any vegetables to it, because as you add the veg, the water temperature is going to drop slightly. We want to make sure that it's the smallest time possible for the water to come back up to the boil with the vegetables in, so that they can cook quickly and not go grey and be in the water for too long. So let's get this water on and we'll have a look. And when it comes down to the veg, you know, as you can see here, this is a little piece, this is a big piece. You kind of want to make sure that they are all roughly the same size, the same, you know, here you can see this one's very thick, this one's a lot smaller. You want to try and make them all as similar in size as possible, so they all cook at the same time. So that's all of our prep broccoli. And then, so we take off the lid and the water is vigorously boiling, and we put in the broccoli. And this is only going to take a few minutes to cook. What you want to do is, after maybe a minute and a half, is take a piece out and put a knife in. See, is there resistance? Is it still really tough? If it's still really tough, maybe it needs another minute cooking. But what you always want to do with vegetables is make sure you don't overcook them. I've drained off the broccoli and here it is, all steaming and hot. And, you know, great. We've now got some beautifully green boiled broccoli. We've let it rest for a minute over the pan, so any excess water's gone. And when you're cooking veg, be it peas, broccoli, you just want to make sure that you still have a little bit of bite. You know, it's still got a little tiny bit of crunch and it tastes amazing. As I've just given that a little taste, obviously I can tell there was a little bit of salt in the water, which is great. But just because you've boiled something doesn't mean that you can't zhuzh it up. And I think maybe that's where a lot of people might fail. But, you know, I'm sure you've probably got things in the cupboard that can make it a little bit more fancy. So, you know, something like this, nutritional yeast. So you get these like flakes. Does weirdly kind of look a bit like fish food, but I promise you it's not. But they're salty and they're kind of cheesy and they're kind of that umami taste. So I love to sprinkle a little bit of that on my broccoli, and then just a nice little glug of oil, just a little bit, just so it's all coated, and then some toasted nuts. This is round 2 of the nuts because I absolutely incinerated some in the pan. Even professional chefs still have little moments. I put them on, I walked away from the stove, got distracted by my telephone, as so happens in modern day life. All of a sudden, my kitchen was full of smoke. So let that be a moment for you. Always stand and watch what's on. But this, yeah, just some nuts. Yeah, and again, these are just going to add a little bit of crunch and texture. And that's also what's really nice when you have a boiled veg, is to then add maybe something to it that's like crunchy. So you just get a different texture. And then finally, just a little crack of pepper. And there is just the most delicious boiled, you know, boiled veg, which always sounds so like you're at school and you're going to get mush, but it's not. It's lovely, tender broccoli with a perfect amount of seasoning, a lovely bit of crunch from the nut, and that little extra saltiness from the nutritional yeast. If you didn't have that when they come out, just give them a little extra season with salt. So yeah, never underestimate a lovely little boiled veg. They're quick, they're simple, and they're a great way to just enjoy something delicious. I mean, these, you know, it's like al dente pasta. That's what you're looking for when you're boiling a veg, and it's just perfectly seasoned. Broccoli is probably my favorite vegetable. It's so delicious. Anyways, on to the next method. So this is the mid-range point of boiling and roasting. We're at parboiling. Parboiling, usually for things like a root vegetable, a carrot, a potato. These take a lot longer to cook than, let's say, broccoli or peas. The benefit of a parboil for them when you roast is A, you can do it before time. So let's say it's coming up to Christmas, you know, Christmas Day is pretty hectic. There's a lot going on in the oven. You can parboil your potatoes for your roasties so that they are ready just to go straight in the oven in the morning, in the afternoon, whenever it is you're having your Christmas dinner. And you don't have to worry about them not cooking, taking too long, all that kind of stuff. Same with your carrots. You could have them already parboiled, and then you know that when they go in, they're not going to take as long to roast, and they're going to get really good bit of colour and crisp in a shorter amount of time. Now, don't get me wrong, you could just go ahead straight away and roast these in the oven, but it would take a long time, and you might find that they don't go as crisp. You need to have a hot oven when you're roasting, and that is sometimes not conducive with things that take longer to cook, because then they might be burnt on the outside but actually still raw in the middle. It also comes down to, much the same as the broccoli, size. Whenever you're doing something like this, keep them the same size. If they're closer in size, they're closer to all cooking at the same time. So we're going to parboil these, and then we're going to roast them. Easy as. So what I would say, water, a good teaspoon of salt, we're putting them in and we're parboiling them. So we're only going to cook them for a few minutes. Maybe for a potato, that might be 6, depending on the size, but about 6 minutes. And then while they're cooking, you can get a pan in the oven or the air fryer. We all know I love the air fryer, which is probably what we're going to use today. But you can get that heating up, ready to go, so that when they're slightly cooked, they can go into a nice hot oven and start that process really quick. They're not warming all the way up from cold, and they're just getting good and roasted. So let's prep some of these. Let's get them parboiled. So like here, you could put these straight in the oven now. We're going to season them with salt, good bit of olive oil, coating the outside. That means that seasoning is all sticking to it, but they will take a while. So let's get them in the water, get them a little bit cooked, a little bit crunchy, and then we'll douse them in a bit of oil and salt, and they can just be absolutely delicious and crisp. So let's get them on. And then with the potato, all I'm going to do, we're going to cut it up into chunks that are roughly the same size. So like this. If I was to put this in the oven, that would take probably an hour and 10 minutes to cook. I think you'll always be surprised at how long it would take, but we're going to parboil it, and then it's going to go nice and crisp. So we'll get these guys on, get them par cooked, and then we'll get them roasted. And because these are both root vegetables, we're going to put them in the water and bring the water up to the boil to cook them. So from cold to hot. Broccoli, on the other hand, can go straight into boiling water. He grows above the ground. So anything that grows under the ground goes in cold and you bring it up, and anything that grows above the ground you put into boiling. Just a little tip, because if I was to put these into boiling water, the outside surface would cook much quicker, and actually the interior, not much would happen to it. So it's really important that you bring them up in cold water. So that's the carrots, parboiled. Let's have a look at them. Still crunchy in the middle, but they're starting to cook on the outside, which means is that the sugars can caramelize quicker in the oven, and it means that you're going to get that lovely color much quicker on the outside, less time in the oven, still great result. So for these ones, what we're going to do is use a different kind of salt. So we're going to go into the into the bowl, and it's great to do this when they're hot, because then they'll just kind of suck in all them extra flavors. So instead of salt for these, they've already got a bit of salt in them from seasoning them and parboiling them, but we're going to go for soy. So we'll go for a little bit of soy sauce. That's our salt in this one. And then a little bit of pepper. We still do need a dribble of fat, because that is what makes everything stick. And then just a tiny little bit of honey, half a teaspoon, absolute max. We don't want a lot, because obviously there's sugar in carrots, which means they'll caramelize. But then again, this just gives it that little bit of extra caramelization. And this, again, this is all just flavor, but you always want to make sure all coated in that lovely stuff. Give it a little taste. Is there enough soy there? Does it taste salty? Yes, it does. Is there sweetness there? Yes, there is. There's a little bit of pepper. So, this is great. Like I said, if you were pre-cooking these, let's say the day before Christmas, you could just pre-cook them, let them cool down, put them in the fridge. Next day, they come out. We put the seasoning on them, and you just put them in. They're going to be much quicker. That is what is great about parboiling a vegetable. So these guys are going to go in, and we're also going to get the potatoes ready. So we'll have a look at them now. So this is the potatoes. They've come off, and as you can see here, this little area is where they're starting to cook. They are still very much raw in the middle, but what's really good about a potato is now that it's got a little bit of cooking, you can ruffle them up. And so this is great for when you do a roasty. You want that ruffled edge, and that is where the oil is going to stick, and like a little bit hot potato. This is where the oil's then going to stick and make things go really crispy, crunchy. As you saw me there, I just really finely cut up a little bit of rosemary and grated in 1 small clove of garlic. So that's here in the pan. We're going to add the potatoes. We're going to add some salt, because even though, again, they've had salt in them, they now need salt on them. A little bit of pepper, and then just a little bit of fat. You always need a little bit of fat. Again, that's why the restaurant stuff tastes so good, because you'd probably be horrified about the amount they put on there, but that's just what happens, because as you can see there now, all them flavors in that bowl have stuck to them potatoes. It's going to give it a little bit of extra. These smell amazing. It also means that oil is going to get hotter quicker when it goes into the oven, air fryer, wherever it's going. It's going to get hotter quicker, which means it's going to start cooking and getting crispier faster. We're going to get them in as well. We'll get them cooking, and then we're going to come back to them when they're roasted and done. So, like we said, a roast potato, that's something, if you're cooking it from raw, you're putting it in the oven, and it's going to take an hour and 20 minutes. Look at these things. So this is parboiled and then roasted. They've only been on for 20 minutes, and look at these things. They look absolutely next level, and the cooking time has been cut in half. This is what restaurants do all the time to save them time. So let's just give these little things a try. Them edges are wonderfully crisp. And that salt that was in the water has seasoned the potato the whole way through. And then on the outside, we've got the extra seasoning. We've got the rosemary, we've got the garlic, and the little bit, and the salt and the oil. All them things come together to make it absolutely incredible. And without the salt and without the oil, you wouldn't end up with such a great outcome if you didn't have them things. And I tell you what, if that salt, even that extra bit of salt that we put on the outside, if you didn't have that on there, it still wouldn't be as flavourful as it is this way. So you just got to give it a try. And next we'll get to the carrots. I turned the oven on to 220. These carrots have been in for 25 minutes. We'll take them out and we'll have a little look. And so here we have them par roasted carrots that now have gone into the oven, and they've just got a lovely little bit of colour, and they're crisp and they're delicious. But this is why I do actually prefer the air fryer for roasting things, because the air fryer is a convection oven. So what it does is moves all that heat around all the time. And if your oven in your house is a little bit old, that function might not work as well as it would in a small device like the air fryer. So even though we've got a fantastic result, if these are gone in the air fryer, in that same amount of time, I would say that they would actually have a bit more colour on. But either way, it doesn't matter. They're still going to taste delicious, so let's get them on the plate and have a little look. And then with these carrots, because they've got a little bit of soy and honey, why not just give them a little sprinkle with a few little sesame seeds? And let's just give these little carrots a go. Oh, you know, that carrot is cooked all the way through. It still has a tiny little bit of bite left, but the outside is caramelized, it's delicious. That soy is the saltiness that it needs. It counterbalances the sweetness of the honey and the carrot, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So I definitely would suggest that if you want quick roasties, for sure, parboil is the best way to do it. And then you can just cook them in the air fryer, in the oven, whichever one it is, and get a nice fast result. And now we're just going to learn the last part of this series, and that's roasting your veg. And now for the very last one, roasting, fully roasting from raw. So for this, we're going to use some Brussels sprouts. People either love them or people either hate them. I think the reason why people hate them is, again, not being seasoned properly. This is a great thing to roast. This butternut squash, carrots, you know, broccoli, cauliflower, all of them things. But the most important thing when you're roasting them is the high heat. You want high so that they get caramelized, so that they get crunchy. And I think people always think that it doesn't take that long, but actually it does take a lot longer than you really need. So we're gonna put these in, we're gonna do it in the air fryer. Again, I like this because it's got great convection, it moves all that air around, and it gets things way crispier, way quicker, and cook things faster. So it's a really great little nifty gadget. But if we were doing it in the oven, we want to turn the oven on now, 210, get it nice and hot. We want to put a tray in, we're going to put some oil in there, we're going to get it nice and hot, and then we're going to add our seasoned Brussels to it. But also the same with the air fryer, we will preheat it, we're going to turn it on, 190. Get it nice and hot, then we're going to add these in, and they're going to be coated, they're going to have that oil on them, the oil's going to make the heat draw into them quicker, it's going to make them crisper, and we're going to season them. These are all the most important steps when it comes to cooking. So now it comes down to the seasoning. I know I've repeated it about 100 times already during this video, but that is the most important part. Seasoning is what makes things taste good. So, as with all of them, we've seasoned in the beginning. Now, with the boiling, that was seasoning the water before the veg went in. With the parboiling, seasoning it before it went in. And it's the same with these. We want to season them before they go in. So it's really important that that process is at the beginning, and then we can taste them at the end, and if they need a little bit more salt, we can put it on, but then that means that that salt will have penetrated into the veg. So for these, we are just going to add a little bit of cayenne pepper, some salt and pepper, and some olive oil. And a little thing about spice, you know, lots of people will just go honeys for the spice, put that all on, and think that it's seasoning, but it's not, it's a spice. A seasoning mix, on the other hand, like one you might buy in a packet, like a Cajun spice, will nearly always have salt in it. So in that case, the salt can carry the spices. But if you're just going straight with spice, you still need to add salt, because the salt is what makes it all taste great. As I said before, importance of size. So, you know, we can see here this broccoli, this Brussels, massive. This guy, very small. So if we cut this guy in half and cut this guy in half, this one's still going to be a lot bigger, so maybe this has to go into 4. You always want them to be around about the same size so that they cook at the same time. So the Brussels into the bowl, and now we season. Salt, pepper, and then our spice. And this can be whatever spice you like, but you know, whatever it is you add, you still need to have the salt. And then what I like to do before I add the oil is give them all a toss, so that the stuff that's loose around can start to stick and coat each and every one. So they've got an even coating on each. And then when we add the oil, that will then lather up the outside for roasting. And I would say when it comes to roasting anything in the oven, you would usually need about a tablespoon of oil, whatever it may be. Coconut, olive, veg, whatever. Sesame oil, you know, whatever you're using. So now they're all nicely coated. You can see them all glistening. They look fab. Now it comes to how you put them into your air fryer in this case, but if you were putting them into the oven, same thing. What you always want to make sure you do is when you're roasting that things have enough distance around them, like this, instead of like this. So when they start cooking, you know, this one that's underneath, that's in the pile, he's not going to get any heat to him quickly. The heat's got to go through this guy, and maybe he's only going to get to him on the edge, and so he might get really burnt there, but he's going to be steamed in the middle. So it's always really important that you give whatever it is you're roasting a good amount of space. So ideally, they all can sit face down in their own little area, so something like that. So the air fryer's had its little bit of preheating, and then these guys, we're just going to pop them in the base there, so they've still got all room around them and that the air can circulate just like that. And then they're going to go in, and we're going to roast them again for probably 20 minutes, and they're going to just be absolutely banging. So we'll have a look at them halfway through and see how they're doing, and we might need to turn them over. But it's a great way to roast veg in the air fryer. And again, nice hot heat. We're going in at 190 to 200. If you've got a vegetable, say like the butternut squash, that's full of a lot of moisture, you need to do it a little bit higher, because it's going to start releasing that steam before it starts to cook. So you want to make sure that steam can get out quick, because it's nice and hot and essentially is dehydrating before it then crisps up. And there we go, they're done 20 minutes later, and we've got these absolutely wonderful, crispy, crunchy, insanely incredible little Brussels sprouts. I mean, yeah, if you were tormented with them as a kid, then this is definitely a new and improved way to eat them. And what's awesome are all these little crispy, crunchy leaves that come off of them. I mean, oh, they're salty, they're delicious, they're a little bit spicy from the cayenne. Absolutely sensational. But also, when it comes to things like this, the little finishing touches is like what always makes a dish. Just adding that little bit of extra something can make it go from boring to awesome in one easy foul swoop. Like, it doesn't take a lot. And these are an example of that. But just to zhuzh them up a little bit more, drizzle them with a little bit of dressing. This is just some coriander, yogurt and garlic. And honestly, I mean, if you served that up on a Sunday, no one would be questioning the fact that they got given Brussels sprouts. These things are banging. And you can even crunch them little guys up and make a cool little bit of dust. It's the whole thing of it being boring and bland to just an absolute winner for the dinner table. I hope that within this small Learn to Cook series, you get lots of tips and tricks and hints and all them kind of things that make cooking a joy. And you know, if you've liked this kind of thing, let me know in the comments. I always love to hear what you guys have to say. And even better, if you're not subscribed here and have thought, hey, this was interesting, give me a like and a subscribe and never miss out on any content like this. I hope that this one was educational, but also informative, and maybe gave you a few new ideas on how to do things with your veg. You know, it doesn't have to be boring and bland. It can be tasty and tremendous. I mean, you know, it really doesn't have to be hard. And I mean, these were zero effort put into them, and yet you get a great result at the end. So let's give these little guys a go. Oh, I I just friggin' love a Brussels roasted. Oh my God. Okay, the cayenne, spicy, chili, hot, perfectly seasoned, lots of salt, lots of pepper. And then that yogurt dressing just to really cool it all down and be, you know, be zingy and fresh and fragrant to go with that roasted Brussels. It's just an absolute win. So, I hope that you take something away from this. Oh, you give all these fantastic things a go, and let your veg game be elevated. I'm actually going to go and eat all of these for my lunch and then probably have, well, we know what cabbage makes things smell like, but doesn't matter. We're going to go for it anyway, because these are delicious. So I will see you all next week in the kitchen. Catch you later.